We're now on Daf Kuf Tes Zayin Omid Aleph. L'may nechushlo. The Gemara now, in explaining the sheet of Abaye, who normally is afraid and suspicious when there are two people with the same name, and yet Rebbe was machshir two different shtarei chov, and he didn't care about the fact that there were other people with the same name. So Abaye analyzes, and he's going to exclude any possible chashash that would matil safek, that would cast a shadow of a doubt as to whether we can rely on these shtaros, that would question the validity of the shtaros. If we're saying that there was someone else with that name who dropped the shtar, that's a ridiculous chashash. Statistically, it's close to zero, because mizar zord, a person who has a shtar chov, he's not going to lose the shtar. He's going to lock it up. His money is in the balance. He needs that document to prove that so-and-so owns the money. Maybe someone else deposited, somebody else with the same name deposited this shtar in the hands of so-and-so who has the same name. He says, name, that's not a chash. That's also zero possibility. Came into Shmei, Kishmei, since they have the same names, lo mafkid gabe. That would be too dangerous and a ridiculous move on the part of one chavi to give it to another chavi. My amrit. So what now is your real chash? Dilma masarle. You're afraid that maybe the balashtar, the other chavi, actually transferred ownership over the shtar to another fellow by the name of chavi. You see here that the malveh owns the halva, and he can transfer the halva to someone else through a shtar by transmitting the shtar to somebody else. And now that somebody else owns the chol. So perhaps he was moser lo, but there was no kinyan on the shtar. So the original owner, the original chavi, still owns the shtar. So now you're going to collect it from the second chavi. Maybe he got it from the first chavi. But the answer is he did get it from the first chavi, but osios niktos b'misira. That when it comes to shtaros, you don't have to make any other kinyan. All you need is a misira. And therefore, the other chavi became the owner of the chov. The first chavi transferred ownership over the chov to the second chavi. They found the get in surah. It says in the text of the get. It says Besura Mos in the city of Surah Nan Ana I Anan Barchia Narda. Anan Barchia, I come from Narda. Piteras Usrechis Plonis Insise. Patarti Vigirashti is Ishti. Now, apparently it was known, it was public knowledge, that there was a person whose name was Anan Bar Chia. And the Chachamim vacillated back and forth. If we find such a get, can we return it to the Isha? Because not only do we know this guy, Anan Bar Chia, and that would certainly be ample reason to return the get to the Isha, but you know what? Maybe there's another Anan Bar Chia that we don't know about. He's Nechbel HaKelim. Is Badkur Rabbanon Misur V'Anar Dovelo Avianan Bar Chia Achrina. There was no other person in that entire Gegim who had the same name, Anan Bar Chia. Lebar mi Anan Bar Chia mi Chagra de Hava bin Arda. So besides this Anan Bar Chia Mechagra, who was in Arda, there's no one else. No one else with the same name. Asu Sadiv Yomru, Hu Yoma, Ki Ichtav Hahu Gita, Anan Bar Chia Mechagra, Dabonav. So two witnesses are testifying that on that day, that very day that they wrote the shtar, Anan Michigra was in Arda. Now the get says, if you remember the original, was written in Surah. That itself should give us a chashash. It should be a race on the get. And maybe, in fact, there's another Anan Bar Chia, because the Anan Bar Chia that the Edom are testifying was in Narda, and the get was written in Surah. Apparently, it's a long distance from Surah to Narda. Amar Abaya, Aflididi, the Aminan Chayshinon, Hachalo Chayshinon. Abai says, even according to my view, back on the previous Amud, that with Choshesh, there might be two people with the same name, even though we don't know that there's another person with the same name. And therefore, Abai said, we don't give the get back to the woman until we know for sure that there's no one else with the same name. Is Hachalo Chayshinon. Here, I admit, I concede that we're not going to be Choshesh for someone else with the name Anan, because they checked from Narda all the way down, and they didn't find anyone with that name. You'll ask me, Akasha, Dok Amri Sadi Tibin Arda Havi. Right, that those Edom who wrote the get were in Arda. Man Bos Besura. You'll ask now, how could these Edom who testifying that that Anan from Narda wrote a get in Surah? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's all on one day. It's stated there's a date in the get. How is it possible that he from Narda reached Surah when we know that he was in Narda on that day? It's like Edom's over here. And the Gemara seems to be assuming that we don't have to worry about this, because it's very possible that the Edom didn't write the get until they got to Surah. Now, Rava disagrees. Omar Rava Afladi Didlo Chayshinon, even though in general, Mistama, I'm not going to be Choshesh that there's someone else with the same name. Hacha Chayshinon, here we know about somebody else with the same name, and I would have to concede that in this case, we can't return the get to the Isha. We have to be worried which of these two fellows with the same name actually wrote the get. So the Edom testified that on that day he was in Arda. So he couldn't have written the get because the get was written in Surah. We got the wrong guy. No, says Rava. Dilma begamla parchaz. Maybe the other Anan, the fake one, so to speak, got on a flying carpet, flying camel, and on the same day he made it all the way over to Surah. Maybe Alekfitza Derech. Maybe he said a shame. He whispered, some name of, Inami Mili Masa. Or it's possible that in his city of Narita, he instructed two witnesses to write a get for his wife, and those witnesses picked themselves up, got to Surah. That's where they wrote the get. And even though they wrote the get b'shmo shekaseh b'surah, they're writing it in first person, he from Surah, in Surah, it doesn't mean that he was in Surah. but rather was written by shluchim from Surah. Avalu Rav Safri, Rav Safri, like Rav used to say to the Sofrim, the scribes who write Gittin, V'chein Omerlu Rav Huna L'Safri, Ki Intachu B'Shile, when you're in a place called Shile, Ksuvu, right, to get B'Shile. Afagav, the Mimser Mili Behini. So they were authorized by the Baal, who appointed them as a shliach in Hini, but yet they will write the name Shili. And the same is true in the reverse. So even though there was another Anan in Narda on the day of the Ksivas Aget, so even though he's in Narda, and therefore we should exclude him, we shouldn't be choshesh for that Nanan, but nevertheless, it's very possible that the Eidim picked up and went to a surah. And if we have to be choshesh that this woman who's married to Anan is not the Anan that's written here and that wrote to get. Gemara comes to some conclusion. And what's the final maskana as far as Shumshimi is concerned? Rav Yemar Amar Lo Chayshina. Ravina Amar Chayshina. And we have to be choshesh against the mafkid's claim that maybe the nifkad switched it around. We're not going to apply the principle of kan nimsa, kan hoy. The Mishnah says, K'tata beino ve'no, eino nemenis. She's not believed to say that her husband died because there's a marital disarmament. Echi domi k'tata beino ve'no. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel B'Omeres l'bayla gersheni. She demanded a get from her husband. That indicates that she's in a real matzav of k'tata. So Gemara says, "Nain, I wouldn't be spoiled from the fact that a woman says, divorce me." These are, people get angry, they get a little out of this, so they say, give me a divorce, but it doesn't mean that it's not a ketata. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's a ketata. She says that you already gave me a divorce, and in truth, he didn't give her a divorce. But we see how eager she is to get a divorce and get out of his rishus. That's going to be a proof that she hates him. The Gemara says, "Vilehemne midarav hamnuna." If she is standing in front of her husband and face to face, she says to him, "You divorced me already." A woman would never, ever look her husband in the face and say, and fabricate the truth and say, "You gave me a divorce." So the Gemara answers, you divorced me in the presence of these Eidim, Uche Ilna, and Bezdin asked these two Eidim, and she identified these two Eidim, and she said they were there at the get. The Amru Lo Yidvar, they deny that. So for sure, she's not believed against two Eidim when they deny the whole story. But nevertheless, it is a proof that she really wants to get out of this marriage. My time of the Ketata, what is the level of disharmony? And we should be choshesh that she's lying. Rabbi Chanina Omer Mishum de Meshakra. She hates him And therefore she'll come to lie and fabricate the truth that as if she lost her husband in order to go ahead and have a relation with another husband, and she won't be able to go back to her first. And Rav Shimi Bar Ashi Omar Mishum Di Omra B'Didami. We suspect that maybe because of her hatred and the extent to which she wants to get out of this marriage, she's not going to be medayik hetev to see whether he actually died. El b'cholfen shesakana hitola shevade mes. So according to Rav Shimi, there's a bit of dummy. I call it wishful thinking. She's a conjecture that he died. She convinced herself that he died. Not that she's hating him so much that she's going to fabricate a whole story that he died. My beinayu, and with this we'll conclude here on the top of Kuftat Tezayin Beis, Ike beinayu, the argel who ktot, that he was the one who initiated the enmity. She's sort of only reflecting it a little bit, but she really would want to stay in the marriage if it was up to her. And this is going to be an afkamina. According to Mandi Yomi, who says that the reason of ktot is because mishakeres. Here, she's not going to fabricate the truth and try to aser al baila when she really wants this marriage. She would only love if a therapist would save the marriage. But according to Mandi Yomi, that ktot is chashuda lomar b'didami, that she's not medayekes. Well, even if there's a ktot muetes, a little bit of friction, tension, then she'll say b'didami. She'll already, assume that she knows he's dead when she really, so she's not. Mahu, my time at Heidecha Mehem, Mishum de Bilsavi Gluye, Lo Mashaker, Hachadami, Lo Mashako, Dilma, time at Heidecha Mehem, Mishum de Daiku, Minsaba, Vahocha, Keva de Isluk Tata, Lo Daiku, Minsaba, Teku. Right, so this is where we'll stop. And you'll let me know if you have some flexibility tomorrow, so we'll try to get in the Daf Yomi a little bit later on.